Belinda Jane, here we are, episode 7 in this wonderful series showcasing the elements of life, your work, your life experience, hard one, and what an honour for me to be here. I'm always grateful. Today we discuss the intrinsic nature of relationships. Now, when I thought about that, it is such a broad term, but it took me back to something that you taught me some time ago about the archetypes that form the basis of relationships. I'd like to start with this idea. The feminine brings nurture and nourish. The masculine is the protector and the provider. It's a beautiful idealistic concept that has gone in so many different directions in our lifetime, certainly today. What does any of that mean? Even the thought of the archetypes of masculine and feminine will perhaps attract some criticism. As a starting point, I'd like to start with a base, if that's a balanced base of the feminine and a balanced base of the masculine. Where do we take this conversation? And if we've gone wrong as a society, why have we gone wrong? And how do we rectify the balance?
This session for me is really about intimacy and the dance between the male and the female, and the woman and the man is intrinsic, as you say, to how we play out the love dance. And intimacy is the deepest part of yourself shared with the deepest part of another. So when we say the eyes are the windows to the soul, the intimate relationship is actually also such a great opportunity for us to see deeply and darkly. It's almost our place of our deepest and darkest healing is the intimate relationship, the dance between the male and the female, the yin and the yang, the masculine and feminine. They're kind of just soul kisses or our markers throughout it, and just like an understanding that this is where we are. But it helps us to find our landing position within our own soul and our cells and our psyche, I feel. You know, when a man and a woman come together and they're wanting to create a family, something shifts and moves within their psyche or within their soul story. Something new opens up. And so that's the dance of intimacy. And there's such... it's trustworthy and it's loyal, and you move to the adore and you drop some defences. The paper cells are supposed at that time to fall away, and you're laid bare, so to speak. And so all of the yin yang and the masculine feminine, the woman and the man are just almost like signposts, I think, to help us find our way in it. And those things in the archetypes are really fundamental. And people can reject them or accept them. You know, neither you nor I are judging or critical of that at all. We just offer what our work offers, which is quite clear about those things. I'm very clear about the roles. But I'm very happy for people to be quite fluid in it. But that's not me, and that's not my work. Yeah.
So, as a starting point then, the intimacy of which you speak, defining the window to our souls. Does the intimacy in a relationship then give us the opportunity to expose our weaknesses, if I can put it that way, or our challenges in life, and therefore the relationship becomes an opportunity for personal insight and for personal evolution? I'll put it to you another way, the idea that relationships are the gym equipment of life.
It's the healing of your wounds. It's the opportunity, actually, where we're not told that. It's almost set up to be exactly the opposite, right? But it is the opportunity for the healing of all the wounds, of all the dark and hurting bits. Right? You are supposed to be held safely in those places where you can expose yourself to the level and the degree of being able to be heard and held, to lift out of it, to lift out of the pain, or to soul settle it. Yeah, the quality of our intimate relationship directly determines the quality of our life. All relationships, actually, but the intimate one has a very fine point on it. It's got a soft spot.
So, Belinda Jane, to explore that idea further, that will require your intimate partner to be able to hold you, and therefore that person would have to really have their act together themselves and be more or less whole enough not to be triggered or to be undermined or to feel insecure in any way or to go into their own child wounds because you're expressing yours. Would that be right?
Well, I think they're both able to do that. And when we spoke to love, that unconditional element, it's the fact that the communication and the conversation needs to go to a deeper place than just the trite and just the romantic. What happens with the Persephone, as you know, the Persephone archetype, is that she walks into love with the blindfold on, right? And the rose-coloured glasses, I call it, from my personal experience. And that's meant to be so that she... all of us. So we walk in almost going, you're elated, right? You're there in a place of complete trust that you will be heard and held, as I say. So we need that. Otherwise, we would never do the deeper, darker work. You would not go in there without almost being not tricked, I don't want to say that, but the illusion that everything is going to be laced with gold dust and rose petals all the way. The realistic thing is you're not there for that. You're actually there to heal yourself and become whole. And to whole people, not two half people that then make a whole. So in my personal experience, when I was younger, I was fortunate that I was always kind of treated as a queen. The men and boys in my life, I was really fortunate in that journey. So I kind of felt like that's the way it was always going to be for me. And then when I moved into, as you know, my most important or easiest and most natural part of our work is home and family. And that's just everything to me. But when I moved from the mix of home and family with an intimate relationship, that's where my trauma bond began, because 3 generations of my family, my matriarchal line, had drawn men to them that were not trustworthy. Right? So, and then they, as women, had to carry their whole story on their own and raise their children and support the family financially on their own. So I'd grown up that way, and I was determined not to do that. I was going to kind of marry a king because I'd had this experience. And then as soon as children came around, my wound or my need to hold and heal that soul story, because we know it's woven through all of our lives, our DNA carries it, was exposed. And it was exposed to such a degree that I kind of woke up in many very different ways in my role. I became more of a nurturer and nourisher, and wasn't necessarily met over time with the protector and provider. So I began to pick that up as well. And that is something that I feel like I kind of did that for too long. But what happened in the end, at the end of the day, was through that sort of conflict and chaos and really dark night of the soul, can only be said.
Taking off the rose-coloured glasses.
Taking them off, slid off and thrown across the room, was this part of our work now, where there's new archetypes, where the Peter Pan man and the gossip girl woman have become a real thing in my life, and I'm able to integrate that when I'm working with people. We move toward the king or the kingdom and becoming whole, or we move to the queen, the queendom, or becoming whole, and people are able to make that clear decision. Are you with a Peter Pan or are you with a king? Is he wanting, as you say, is he wanting to move to the kingdom? Because you don't go into a relationship like that as the king and the queen. It may be something you aspire to, but that needs to be discussed. And I'm not criticising and judging the people that go in as the Peter Pan and the Gossip Girl, but I think it's a really good idea to be aware of that they're not going to move out of that cycle. And that's fine, but it's not what I wanted, right? And it's not what I want for my clients. And you know, mostly I do get the women that are wanting to be the queen and the men that are wanting to become the king and stand in that kingdom. What does that say? That's a man who is trustworthy. He puts his home and family first so that they feel chosen, so that he dedicates his money, time, energy and love just to them, right? That's the ideal of it. And many that I see in my practice, as I was going through my marriage breaking down, were bringing that. So I had a sharp contrast. Well, I'm bringing this, I'm not receiving that. And I probably stayed in that patterning for way too long, which then ended up causing such resentment when we became disenfranchised. And so I'm fortunate that I can catch people now because of my lived experience at that moment in time and say, hey, I kind of know where this is going to go. You may need to make some decisions and choices. And the search for those archetypes are really helpful because they're simple, right? You can easily see them and say them. People will call it straight away now. So I have that time to thank for this, where it's arrived to be able to weave that thread into the work. And I think it's going to help a lot of people.
Oh, I have so many questions right now. I hope I can retain them all. One burning question that I don't want to lose is you talk about the king being, as we started, the protector and the provider. That's the goal,
yeah.
Right? So if you can be the whole balanced masculine as a man, this is what I have tried to reach for and still do. And if you can provide, protect, be comfortable in that role, where do you find yourself then with a woman? And what is the archetype of the woman who rejects that?
She doesn't trust it. She doesn't trust it, or she's the gossip girl. The gossip girl is the woman who lives inside other people's stories rather than, so she moves out in the world being, the part that she plays is in other people's stories and lives rather than her own. So she'll gossip and tell stories about, and all of the focus will be way externally because she can't and not ready to, maybe, and never will, and that's fine, to access the inner dark depth of what it truly means to be female, right? And so that's a very different trajectory to the woman who feels an intrinsic need to nurture and nourish, create a home and family. She can still have a purpose and passion, which we'll be discussing in the next episode of this. It doesn't mean that all of that is off the table. It means that she weaves and integrates it, but the home and family is her centre. The relationship of the king and the queen is at the centre and the core values of what she carries with her. So it's a different life you draw to you as a result of just knowing that.
You know, you alluded to this. You didn't allude to it. I'll bring you back to it. In the love episode,
yep,
you talked about the women that you mentor and help,
yep,
in relationship context. And I think you put it like this. If I can paraphrase this, you said something along the lines of the women who want to go and control, you know, a new relationship or even the courtship. And you were saying, no, sit back, do nothing, let him come to you, let him work for it.
Because otherwise he doesn't value it. And you don't feel valued because you don't feel chosen. And one of my beautiful clients about 4 or 5 years ago said to me, I want to feel the adore. And I was like, and I just remember, because it was the very last thing I was feeling 5 years ago. So I can remember the tingles going through my body and my tears welled up. And I said, that is the most exquisite thing I've ever heard. If I could feel it. I want to feel the adore. I was like, yes, don't we all? But you need to be worthy and deserving. We speak to that often of that place. So a woman has to be doing the deeper work. The same as the man that's wanting to become the king. He needs to be doing the deeper work, as you alluded to initially. It's not a surface thing. You either go deep or you go shallow. And if you go shallow, then you need to be with the person that's really happy on that level, and they can have the most fabulous life, right? But if you're wanting the king and queen or the kingdom, then it's a very different choice that you make in your partner, right? And, in choosing mine, I looked at my husband's father, who still to this day is the archetypical king, right? And as a psych, of course, I would view that would be where he will go when there's marriage and children involved, right?
If he was the king, then why wasn't his son?
That's right. And I feel, because I don't know that my husband rose to his dad, which is part of the thing we speak about in rites of passage. Like for a woman to move into her queen, she has a rite of passage where she goes from maiden to mother when she gives birth. But prior to that, the apron strings are cut around 15 to 17 when she rises to her mother. So the boys that don't rise to their father, right, like they do in the wild, you think about the locking of the horns, you think about, who comes out with their power reigning supreme, right? And the fathers, if they're secure enough, are supposed to allow their sons to rise to them and stand chest to chest and eyeball to eyeball in a deep place, which is the rites of passage that you do in your work, right? Is to teach them that they're allowed, but they need to rise, right? And it's the same with the woman. My girls all did it. They all rose. And I allowed that. My mum wasn't so good at allowing that, right? And it took us a long time to heal as a result of that. But I learned, lived experience again, I learned then I will allow my girls to do that. And they all did. Faith is still in flux with that, still rising. And it's not easy. You have to be pretty secure to allow it and to enable it. Right, but that again is the hallmark of the queen or of the king.
So bringing this back to intimacy in relationships, the woman who allows the man, her man, to express his authentic masculinity, balanced, he has it in him, he's going for the king, protector, provider, that takes an awful lot of courage on her part, doesn't it?
Yeah.
To let him do that. So I guess, can I then go one step further and deduce from that the woman who won't allow her man to be king does so, holds him back through her own fear?
Yeah.
And you're saying that lack of trust, but also fear, whatever that fear is, because she's not whole in her own about her own archetype to allow to be with a king, to feel comfortable being with a king.
Yeah, because the king leads, and we've been told in our society and culture, in order for the man to protect and provide a woman when she's vulnerable, when she's pregnant, when she's birthing, when she's feeding, when she's there's a lot of time in a woman's life actually where she deserves to be heard and held, because it's a sacred thing that she's doing. And I'll always say that gift to life is something that only women bring, contrary to popular belief at the minute. But so that time and space is a natural thing. And what do men do in that time is they keep, their role is to keep the home and family safe and secure, and to lead her into looking after herself, looking after giving her the time and space and the resources. She needs to be resourced during that time. It's kind of flown out the window, and women are expected to do it all, or men are expected to do it all, with the week on, week off. We've spoken about this. And the thing about it is it doesn't work. It doesn't work well, but we've kind of got a broken plan, and we do the best that we can with the tools that we have, right? But could be because 56% of the relationships that we're speaking about in intimacy that go and lead to marriage break. And they break in a really damaging and dangerous way. I mean, we teach in our practice supported separation, but both people need to be leaning into that where they prioritise their child or their children first. And that's not represented in our current, family law circuit, certainly. It's just about the money, for them. They're not holding the sacred nature of the family central, because you can separate an intimate relationship and still be beautifully involved with the caregiving of the protect and provide and the nurture and nourish for that child. but you have to make an agreement, which is why, you know, we've got within the practice now enduring financial agreements that are available to the husband and the wife. They sit down. It's not like a prenup. It's a little different to that. And it's enforceable. And then all of those things are on the table. This is what I'll bring. This is what you'll bring. And it looks at our money, time, energy, love pillars. And it's amazing.
Sorry, I was just deeply in that whole concept. Belinda Jane, I know of so many men who don't know who to be anymore. They don't know who. They say to me, "I can't get it right. I'm confused. Nothing's right. You know, my wife, my partner's micromanaging everything I do.
Yeah.
And I'm feeling, if not redundant, completely disillusioned. What do I do?" And I say to them, don't please anybody. Look inside yourself. Act out of your true authenticity.
Yeah.
But what if she doesn't like it? And I said, then she doesn't like it, but you can't live your life subjugated to the whim of trying to please a woman. I've done that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work.
But
Where are we going wrong? Why are women in our day and time being so... This is not an isolated thing.
No.
And you'd see that a lot as well. Why?
We've been indoctrinated against true nature. And so as a result of that, and it's in every system, right? Every system has led us away from that fundamental basic simplicity. So, you know, in order for a woman to trust, she must feel his leadership, she must be vulnerable, she must be open to that. It is risky, you know, it feels dangerous. But that's what deepens the relationship, that she does it anyway. It's difficult, it's a hard thing, and she does it anyway. And he needs to find his courage to rise and to lead when she's finding all these idiosyncratic things. He lifts above that, right? And in order to lead, in order to resource the family and to set them up for a safe future. And then she will start. And that, again, you know, the infinity symbol, what I give out, so I get back. What I give out, so I get back. And it's really, really clear in intimacy more than in any other thing. Because, you know, the other thing is when we talk about intimacy, we say it's, you know, many people will say it's a sexual thing, when really 1/10 of it is a sexual thing.
If that.
And the exchanging of sexual energy is a sacred thing. That's also been indoctrinated out of us, right? But that's the truth. The cord of every single person you've been with energetically is still with you, remains with you eternally, right? And we, again, as I say, dishonour and discredit that. And we're not raising our women that way. I mean, I have. Our children understood that you make love, you don't have sex, right? It's quite an uncommon way to raise women. And for men, you need to be holding this woman in a place of absolute honouring and respect and taking responsibility and control and action. And of course, that's not taught. That's not taught to our men. So it's fundamental right at the beginning of it, really. Setting us up for failure in intimacy is setting them up for failure, what it means to be a man and means to be a woman right from the start. Because that dance is a sacred dance.
And not only have we lost our way, but if you say it and if you express yourself now in the medium that we all work with, that we're doing now, in the wrong way, people are offended.
Yeah.
So many people, and therefore, you know, you've got this cancel culture coming into it. I'm not interested in talking about that. I think that whole thing is a cancer in that society. I don't want to go there, and it's not the forum of this of the message that we're putting forward. There's a scene in Rocky 1. Rocky 1 is a really underestimated movie. I think it is a profound story. It's the hero's journey, of course, but it has so many messages in it, and people underestimate the brilliance of Sylvester Stallone. And there's a pivotal scene, and it comes with a turning point. And Sylvester Stallone has fought his first fight against Apollo Creed, but he is lost, and he's bought the nice house, but he's spent the money, and he's back working as a meat packer, and he's sitting in the fancy house with Adrian. They got married, and he's lost, and he's comes home, he's just lost his job from the meat packer. I mean, how low does he have to be? So he's gone from nothing to everything, back to nothing in a very short space of time. I mean, think of that as as an archetype to the hero's journey, even that sequence. And she sits down because she sees he is troubled. And she said, "What's wrong?" He said, "I lost my job." She said, "We'll be fine." And he said, "No, we won't." "Yes, we'll make do." And he said, she said, "What are you thinking?" She said, "They want me to fight Apollo Creed again." The first fight almost killed him. So, of course, what is her reaction going to be? She said, "No," she panics. "We can do something else. We can find another way." And she's scrambling. And he looks at her, I'm getting tingles. He looks at her and he says, "Adrian, I don't tell you how to be a woman. Please don't tell me how to be a man."
Yeah.
It's all he knows.
Yeah.
She has to, at that point, dig deep within herself and allow him to be who he truly is.
And to back him. To trust him. But the thing is, if you back and trust over time and that isn't returned, that's where the trust leaves. And that's where the respect and the honouring leaves. And it kind of slams the door behind it. And in my view, what happens is you don't get it back. So that's why it needs to be held in such a precious way, as a precious gift. Because once it's dishonoured, disrespected, and it's gone, it's gone.
You've just said it. Do you know what her line was? Do you know what her response was to that? She thinks about it, and you're hanging onto the seat because you don't know what's coming next. And she looks at him and she says, "All right, but if you're going to do this time, win and do whatever it takes, and I will give you 100% support."
Absolutely.
And I just thought, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, is that intimacy or what?
That's completely it.
Wow.
Because the man is empowered by the power of the woman.
Yep.
That her holding him and going, "I know you can do it. I've got you." The same as, he would do that for her. So yes, that's intimacy's dance completely. And it's got the no matter what clause that we say. And men do better when they are actually doing something that is outside and not just for themselves. Like he was doing that for his wife and family. He felt the accolade, but also she benefited, the family, everyone benefited, right? And that's the goal. That's the king's journey, right? That's the goal of being a king. Yeah. And nothing feels like it. Yeah. And if you don't, you go back to the teenage years. You go back to when you didn't rise with your father. And then you live in that place. And, when we were speaking about as opposed to the king and queen, the gossip girl and the Peter Pan, it's instant gratification. It's that feeling of, if I get my wings clipped, then there's nothing to me. I have no fibre and no depth and no substance. So they'll do anything to not have that feeling of their wings being clipped. When it needs to not feel like wings being clipped. It needs to feel like a joined dance. We're not opposing one another, but you're working together, right? And it's about the journey. It's not about the instant gratification or about the self. It moves from being about the self into being about the whole or all. It's got a level that's bigger than the self. And that's what the men that I work with really love to do by their nature. It improves them to seek to do that, right? And the women, I still believe, and obviously being a woman, this is my lived experience, it's easier for us, I feel like, to do the nurture and nourish completely when we can relax in the trust of our man. And we give our man the inspiration. We give our man sometimes and often, actually, in my practice, the ideas, and then he kind of takes the ball. So she throws the ball to him. I want this, let's do that. And then his role is actually to resource and run with that. So there's the kind of really well-oiled machine.
Well, let me tell you from a man's point of view, this man, me, and other men, there is nothing more inspiring for a man than if he knows that the woman he loves supports him no matter what. And if she says, like Adrian does, I don't like it, but I know it's important. It's an important part of you. go for it, and do your best. There is nothing more inspirational. That man can move mountains. That man can conquer empires and have done.
If he believes in himself first. So he's got to have the confidence, feel worthy and deserving first. So it's those two pillars standing in our work in the fountain first, right? Because otherwise, during that, like if in your story, Rocky had any inadequacy and insecurity that comes to the surface, he'd be smashed into 1,000 pieces. He had to rise in order to succeed. He had to put away the childish things, right?
But that goes back to what we were saying earlier, that if he, as you say, he must have that purpose. And let's call it a purpose.
Yeah.
If he doesn't have that purpose, then he is the guy I was speaking to earlier who was confused because all he's doing is trying to please his woman. Because she's saying, you go and do this, and do it in this way, and do it in the way that I tell you to do it. And he's not doing it because it's not his purpose, he's fulfilling her purpose. And that can only lead to one thing in a man, which is resentment.
And his purpose, if he's in a sacred partnership, needs to be beyond himself. If his purpose is only about him, he is the Peter Pan.
It's self-gratification.
If the gossip girl is the mother where everything is about her and the children come second or the man comes second, then that's a completely different scenario. It's just about her. Again, instant gratification. What do people think about me? How do I mark and measure up against others? Whereas the king and the queen, they're not considerations for the king and the queen at all. Yeah? So they're quite clear distinctions. And the intimate dance weaves perfectly between those two, in my view, between those two, and balancing those and communicating those. And having shared ethics and values around those four things, around our money, time, energy, love, right? And having the conversation and organising how the finances are going to go. What's the end goal? If in order for you to feel safe and secure as a woman, you require this, he needs to come in and say, then that is the requirement that I will offer you because that is my role, right? And if he needs to be nurtured and nourished in a certain way, the delivering of the love languages, then she needs to be prepared to say, I will love you in that way, yeah? In order to take you to the highest place that you're able and capable to go. But they get there faster with the love of a good woman, let's say. And the woman gets to where she needs to go faster with that underpinning of the man, I've got you, right? In all the vulnerability of all the ages and stages and changes that you're going to go through. There is no comparison to you because you are my queen. Very different feeling, right?
2 questions. Part 1, can intimacy get you through adversity in a relationship?
Absolutely. It's its role.
Okay. Second question.
Yeah.
Can intimacy overcome a breach of trust, betrayal, an affair?
I don't feel so. And I know that's really controversial. My experience with
intimacy has its level, its limit, its ceiling.
Well, someone's broken the trust. We were speaking about that being so fundamental.
So
I choose you.
Is gone.
Well, the woman or the man would find that then, in my view, difficult because that cord has been severed. The trust has been broken. And we would say this is only a sexual thing. But that can happen on many levels around many things where something else is chosen to be more significant and important than the partner. That's a breach of trust, fundamentally a breach of trust there as well. Right? So it doesn't just need to be a sexual thing. I choose this and that instead of you and us and what we've created here.
I don't see small lies as any different to the betrayal of the worst kind of betrayal. It's still a breach of trust.
Of trust. And I guess they're the ethics and values that you discussed kind of early on, as we discussed last time, possibly not on the first date, but you can tell the fibre of a person. And then I feel like if we teach, I don't want to say train, but if we teach our young women and our young men about the Persephone archetype, and the Peter Pan archetype, that you're likely until a certain point where you meet your partner, you meet your match, so to speak, you're likely to always come first, and then the veil drops and you move into romantic love for a reason to heal your wounds, to have them exposed like nothing else, to go to that deep, dark place, and there that partner is, right beside you. There's nothing more profound and more sacred than that kind of intimacy. But you will do anything not to break it.
What comes to mind is Rumi's serpent.
Yeah.
And you know what? And the treasures that lay behind, or the road on the journey to becoming the king for the man, and then drawing into that the Jungian archetypes that he must understand before he can conquer the dragon. The archetypal dragon sits at the gate. The dragon is Rumi's serpent, sits at the gate of the kingdom where his damsel awaits, perhaps, or the riches of his future. They're fabulous ideas, aren't they?
They're rich and they're deep and they're often dark, those archetypical stories. And I actually really love them for that. Because as I said around love, where we only look sometimes at the romantic and the trite and the surface, with intimacy, the dance needs to become deeper. It needs to go to a level that we haven't reached on our own. That's why we're in an intimate relationship.
Isn't that the whole point?
Yeah.
The whole point about this idea of a marriage being the unity, the bulwark against the harshness of life. That no matter what, we can do this together because we have a higher purpose, and that higher purpose, you shared something very personal, I shared something very personal. I have a great relationship with my ex-wife. It took 10 years. We have a higher purpose. We have more purpose now than we did when we were together, which is our children are now facing the challenges of being teens. And that's a whole new thing. Right? And we have to work together daily on, and yet she's repartnered and I have not, but we consult daily about the small things and the big things, and the children know this. And in a way, it's good for them too, because it blurs the boundaries between the disruption in their life, the early disruption.
What it does for children watching that between one half of their cells and the other half of their cells, let's just call it biologically what it is, right? 50% of their cells either loathes or loves the other 50% of their cells. So as a psychologist, where's that going to land if one half is loathing the other half? And the child can feel it, they can pick it up.
What a disaster.
Yeah,
and
but it's mostly the case because the person cannot rise beyond themselves and their story, be it the girl, be it the Peter Pan, they can't rise beyond their story and put their child first. But I see children, and you know this, that have survived or thrived very well with supported separation, right, where the parents have risen.
It hurts me so much to see people, men in particular, because I don't have much interaction with women in that scenario, but with the men who don't place the interests of their children at the centre of the next decision they make.
They're told actually by the larger group, and certainly by the courts, that children will get over it. That children will, some miraculous thing will happen and they'll have a forgetting about it, where it is actually the mother wound or the father wound that they then live through, that they create their personality type through. And I've seen it for, as you know, 35 years. But both parents have to be on board with rising above. And that too is a dance of intimacy. It's intimacy ending. It's intimacy closing the gate with grace and dignity and honouring for the other and for the journey, because look what you've made, these children. Yeah.
It's rising above the personal and the interests of the higher good being the outcome of the children.
Well, they ultimately find their way. The children make a decision essentially about the integrity of the parent, and they begin to view them as a human being rather than just a mum and a dad, a husband and a wife. They see them as a person in life, right? And what is the integrity and the honour and it's a behaviour, right? How do they behave? And then what will happen is often with that child, they will choose either really aligned to that or really determined to not repeat that pattern, right? Which is how I began mine, and the veils still fell, and I still needed to heal on a cellular level something that had remained within my familial line, and I'm grateful for it. I don't look at it with any resentment now, right? And as you said initially, it's hard won. But the other point I wanted to make about male-female and the dance that we do, that I find in relationships that have separated, no man, in my view, can teach a girl to be a woman. And no woman, in my view and experience, can teach a boy to be a man. So they really do need, if they don't have the present father or the present mother, they really need community and the intimacy to be pulled around them. They need to have those mentors and those role models. This is what it meant, because my dad didn't show me what it meant to be a man. My mum didn't show me what it meant to be a woman. Right? And that's for both genders.
Do you know, I've been saying that for a long time to women, single mothers, and almost every time it's met with anger.
Yeah.
It's met with an angry response.
Yeah.
And I'll continue to say it because I believe it to be true, and I'm so pleased to hear you say that as a therapist.
Oh, yeah.
I don't pretend. I say that my ex-wife, I can't teach Annika how to be a woman, but I can teach her what a good man looks like.
Yeah.
Or does, or acts, or
how to treat her as a woman. You know? How to treat her, how to honour her, how to listen to her, have her heard and held by the father. Right? And the mothering influence is quite different, but essential. It's so essential. You can't do it on your own, and you're not supposed to. It's not aligned and divinely designed for us to do on our own. It's supposed to be a joint dance, but we have to end and begin on the same page. That our focus of our energy needs to be the same from the get-go, from the outset. And that's what I now, because of what I've been through, that's now what I do with every couple or every person that I see. So it's added this new dimension to the work.
But that requires, first of all, a mutual understanding.
Yeah.
And secondly, a maturity, emotional intelligence, maturity, understanding, the child wounds of the self. I mean, there's a lot behind that. It's not quite so simple. But we're running out of time. I'm thinking about encapsulating this into an idea that somebody can sort of take away and remember. Would it be too simplistic to say that true intimacy comes from personal truth, authenticity, and then the courage to share that?
I would say true intimacy is the exposure of the deepest, darkest places to be heard and held. That's what I would say now, right? That is the journey toward that, and then the lifting out of that as a result of having healed it. That's what I would say the nature of true intimacy is.
Wow, what a mountain to climb. So, but to have the awareness of that.
Oh, well, as I said to you, it's been my greatest challenge, my greatest life's work now. A lot of my writing is around that. It gave me a strength that I never thought I had, because I had to find that. But then I look back at my mother and my grandmother and I go, what incredible women, to have carried that on their own in that day and age at that time. Well, it just gives me a whole new understanding of the women that they were.
Belinda Jane, I'm so grateful. I've learned so much from sitting across from you like this. It's such an honour. Namaste.